44-28, halftime coming to a close in the Mountain West. Utah State a commanding lead over the Air Force Falcons. Rich Waltz along with Dan Dickow. Right now, if you're Joe Scott, you're concerned about the offensive rebounding, certainly, of Utah State, and turnovers are killing this young Air Force team.
Yeah, both of those have been an issue for the Falcons of Air Force, but you have to understand that that's where Utah State is at their best, in spacing the floor, getting opportunities for multiple guys, and then being great on the glass. We mentioned it in the open, they're one of the best teams in the country on the glass, both defensively but also offensively with guys like Justin Bean and Keita.
Yeah, and very balanced offensively for Utah State. This is a balanced team for Craig Smith.
Well, 8 guys scored in that first half who got minutes. 5 guys hit three-pointers, and they did a nice job of spacing the floor against the matchup zone of Air Force. You see Anthony knock down a 3, Bairstow knock down a 3, Justin Bean hits his first 3 of the year. That all of a sudden then opens up the middle to allow Keita to pick, dive, catch, finish over the top.
What would you like to clean up, and what numbers impress you here?
Well, I think it's the points off of turnovers that jump out at me. A lot of Air Force's turnovers led to easy buckets in transition for Utah State. If Air Force can control the tempo, not turn it over, and get good shots, because when they've gotten good shots, they've knocked them down. If they can do that, they've got a chance to climb back in this game.
Difference Makers brought to you by Geico. Neemias Keita, that's an easy choice. He was dominant inside.
He continues to play well in Mountain West Conference. Again, he's a guy who can screen, dive. He's a big target, but I think where he creates the most problems for Air Force is on the defensive end because he's so long. He contests a lot of shots. Guys back cut, they're feeling the footsteps of Neemias Keita. They don't post him very well. He has absolutely been a difference maker.
On the other side, Nick Jackson had a nice first half, 7 points, 3 rebounds. He's a good passer, too.
Well, in the Princeton offense that Air Force runs, you want your bigs to be versatile. You want them to score on the low block and be a presence, but then step out and make plays, and if the defense is soft, be willing and able to knock it down from beyond the arc.
All right, let's see what adjustments both head coaches and both teams are able to make. Air Force has the first possession. McClintock to Van Solen. Walker out there as well, along with Jackson and Joyce. This is McClintock. Van Solen, and a turnover right out of the gate. Bean, Miller, and Utah State, who is killing right now Air Force on points off turnovers. It's 19 already.
Not great spacing or timing on that possession for Air Force, and you mentioned it. That has been a problem. The ability to create offense from their defense, Utah State has done a really nice job of that.
Jackson, one dribble, missed with the left hand, took it away from Bean. That doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't. Usually it's Bean ripping the ball out of somebody else's hands. Jackson opportunistic on the glass that time.
16-point lead right now for Utah State. Keita. Miller has got his rhythm, and when he's in rhythm, he can be deadly from 3.
I think he is the X factor, to be honest with you, for Utah State. When he is aggressive hunting shots and then knocking those down, it frees up Keita on the low block. You see that potential Wooster and Ashworth have. He can be somebody that really sparks them throughout the season.
It's interesting, the dynamics last year, he did not have a great season last year, admittedly, and Craig Smith pointed that out to us this year in talking about how well he's played. He thinks he's playing the best he's ever played right now. He's got college players in his family as well, Corbin and Brandon at Harvard and Utah, his brothers.
Playing with confidence, being a leader on the floor this year is how Craig Smith described him. As Keita cleans up the Bean finish, the offensive glass continues to be a problem for Air Force, and that's difficult when you have Bean and Keita with their energy and length.
And Air Force turns it over again.
Bean picks up the loose ball, misses the layup, but Keita, he has been active today on that offensive glass. You have got to turn and block out. In particular, I'll say it again, Bean and Keita have to be blocked out.
Wooster misses a 3. That's his 3rd offensive rebound. Keita in low, blocked. Van Solen got a hand on it, and it's a held ball.
Van Solen, a nice job of reacting, coming up with a block leading to a held ball. Air Force needs more plays like that. Utah State is a little bit more energetic, more active, coming up with those 50-50 balls.
Air Force is at 3-3, 1-1. Their one win was on the road against Nevada. Remember, they lost the first game of that 2-game series. And 2 days later, they came back and beat Nevada.
And Nevada, that's a difficult place to play. Matter of fact, the Mountain West might be one of the most difficult leagues in the country to win on the road. You're playing at elevation at a number of different places. You're going into smaller college-type towns as opposed to large cities. They're hard to get to. They're good gyms. Obviously, this year with COVID, there's no fans. But A.J. Walker had a tremendous performance in that second game in Nevada where they came out on top on the road.
Even at sea level, in the sunshine, you have one of the most difficult road environments in all of college basketball at San Diego State. When the show is rocking and rolling and Viejas, as it usually is filled, that's a very difficult place. And Walker on the drive after he got the contact back in was fouled by Wooster. Utah State is a particularly hard place to play. It's not an easy place to get to. It's a hard place to play. A lot of it has to do with the caliber of the team they've had, but the fans that turn out for those games in Logan are wild as well. That's a great place to call a game, great place to watch a game.
We've mentioned the offensive struggles of Air Force and the pace they want to play at, but you can go deep into the shot clock, but it's hard when you go that deep into the shot clock and you don't have a true creator off the bounce.
It looked like, Dan, in like the first 2 or 3 possessions of the game, Utah State was having trouble with Air Force's offense. What changed? Because from that point on, the defense of Utah State and Air Force's offense, it's been a Utah State game since then.
And now they're on baseline out of bounds. Gets called for an illegal moving screen. But I think the big thing, the adjustment that Utah State made defensively after getting beat on a couple back cuts is they're playing underneath. They're making Air Force catch the ball above them, not giving them an easy angle for a back cutter to come off the screen.
Bean, unconventional release, but a beautiful 3. Look at the run right now to open up the second half. And the lead sits at 24.
Air Force has got to get A.J. Walker involved. He had career high 27 the night against Nevada. He's been held scoreless. Give Marco Anthony a lot of credit. And another Air Force turnover.
Glenn McClintock, the freshman at guard for Air Force. And of course, these two teams are going to play in 2 days again on the same floor. So both coaches are going to have just a day to make some adjustments. Boy, untouched in low is Marco Anthony. Actually, he was touched, but not until he was shooting. And he's going to have a shot at a 3-point play.
Utah State has done a nice job, and on this possession in particular, finding that soft spot in the zone. Usually right around the nail, the free throw line area is detrimental against the zone. Anthony doing that just right there. You mentioned the back-to-back games against teams. I like that. limiting travel. Mountain West isn't the only conference that's doing that. But I think what you're going to see is, and you saw it for Air Force and Nevada. Air Force struggled in game 1. They came up with the correct adjustments in game 2 and won a game on the road. You're going to see which coaches are the most creative with their game planning.
Well, Joe Scott's going to be really creative and really fiery tomorrow is my prediction in practice for Air Force. And Utah State gets another 3 from Miller. And the lead balloons now up to 29 points.
Justin Bean is usually around the basket creating havoc. Not tonight. 2 threes for Bean, and then Brock Miller, the sniper for the Aggies.
Justin Bean and Utah State on top right now. Tomorrow, 7 Eastern. We start the new year off with more college basketball. Kent State will take on Akron. They switched things up, and Max Central Michigan was going to be in that game. But it's Kent State and Akron. It's on the 24-hour home of CBS Sports. Rich Waltz along with Dan Dickow in the Mountain West. Air Force had surprised a lot of people by going on the road and beating Nevada. Utah State wiped out San Jose State in their first 2 games. So we weren't quite sure what to expect, Dan. I'm not sure we expected this, what is almost a 30-point lead.
No, I know I was not expecting this, especially because of the way that Air Force played, as you mentioned, at Nevada. I know Utah State's tremendous roster makeup after losing their big-time player from a year ago, Sam Merrill, but they have done all the little things. They've contained back cuts, they've controlled the glass, they've forced turnovers, they've gotten out in transition. Overall dominating performance from Utah State with 15 minutes left in the game.
And the goal right now for Air Force is just to settle down, quit turning it over. They have 17 turnovers in this ball game, and they've given up 10 offensive rebounds.
And I think as a coach, a lot of what you're looking for now as well is which guys are going to continue to compete and not back down. Who can be a bright spot that maybe when you watch the film and then prepare for the next game, you can lean on something that maybe catches your eye for the next game.
Brock Miller has hit 3 threes. Wooster, good feed to Keita. Well, they passed the ball so well. Bean again. Inside, Justin Bean finishes.
That time, Keita's the one to get to the soft spot of the zone. We spotlighted Anthony a minute ago. That time, Keita finds the soft spot, and then a nice delivery to Bean on the baseline.
You saw that monstrous run, and Air Force without a bucket for almost 5 minutes of game clock here. Walker hits a 3.
He needed that. 27 against Nevada has been quiet. Utah State's doing a really nice job. Marco Anthony has gotten the majority of the assignment, and he has really limited the good looks for Walker.
Another great pass by Keita, and Bean is fouled. Timeout on the floor.
You want activity? That's Justin Bean working that baseline. The nice finish underneath.
Well, let's see who's doing some of the dirty work in today's game, and it's brought to you by Coyote. Little dirty work by the Air Force defense.
Yeah, Keaton Van Solen being active, giving up quite a few inches on the interior, and when that's the case, you've got to be active. That time coming up with a nice block on the Keita reverse. Air Force is going to need a lot more of that to climb back into this game.
Keaton Van Solen, the senior. I will say this, and with all due respect to our friends at Coyote Tractor, they may want to rename that award the Justin Bean Award, you know, when he leaves the league, because he is the king of dirty work. 14 points here, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. All of his rebounds, Dan Dickow, are offensive rebounds.
Just a tremendous example of a gritty college basketball player. Started his career as a walk-on, quickly earned a scholarship, and quickly earned minutes in the rotation, and he has not relinquished those, become a focal point of this program. Obviously comes from a family that has a high basketball IQ. His father, Gordon, played at Idaho State when they qualified for the NCAA tournament back in the late 80s. He is a difference maker. And he's a guy that any coach would love to have on his team.
Air Force has struggled mightily in this one, even though they're shooting over 50% from the field, which is odd, but then you mix in all the turnovers, 17, all the offensive rebounds they've given up, 11, and the fact that Utah State's shooting 57%, and that's another shot clock violation, and that's a turnover. And here are the numbers.
Well, such a discrepancy in field goal attempts. It's a direct correlation to the turnovers. That is 18 now on the afternoon, and it's leading to opportunities. That time off of a dead ball, but it still gives possession back to Utah State. Brock Miller, another knockdown three from the wing.
Mountain West coaches, I'm sure many of them are watching this telecast or will watch this film. And when they see Brock Miller right now, they're thinking to themselves, whoa, this guy is on right now. He is much more of a weapon than he has been. They didn't really need him as much with Sam Merrill. But right now, Brock Miller looks like a real three-point threat again. He's 4 of 9 from distance. He's playing with confidence. And Air Force gets a bucket on the inbound from Nick Jackson.
To stay on Brock Miller, he does such a tremendous job, I think, of getting in vision of whoever has the ball, whether it's a penetrator or a guy coming off pick and roll, or maybe somebody like Anthony there collapsing the zone in the soft spot. He gets in your vision, and he knows his role. He doesn't try to create off the bounce. It's a quick shot, or it's a move it to the next guy.
Good ball movement. And the finish by Marco Anthony. I think it's, his role has changed, Dan, simply not only, and we've talked about Merrill, but Abel Porter was the point guard of those teams. And so Miller was essentially like a three-point specialist. Now he's having to play a much more complete role, defender, facilitator, and that seems to have him into the game and in a much more comfortable spot.
Yeah, and as a former player myself, I can speak to that, because when you have a bigger role in your team, you I hate to say it, but there's many times where you play with a little bit more concerted effort. Not that you don't give the effort in the first place, but you know that there's a bigger dependency on you to produce on both ends of the floor. And he is definitely showing that he's got a bigger role this year, and he's ready to execute within that role.
That's good to see. And certainly for Craig Smith, it's needed, especially with a freshman point guard in Raleigh Wooster next to him. And then you've got Stephen Ashworth off the bench, who's in right now. He's a freshman as well. So having a guy like Miller in the game, in that role, is perfect for Utah State.
And he doesn't make mistakes, and that's what you want to see from somebody who's been in the program for a few years, where he can kind of be a settling factor for two young guards, Ashworth and Wooster.
That's Ashworth. Cada has been brilliant as a passer in this game. He and Bean are the assist leaders for Utah State. Anderson beats the clock and hits the three, just like they drew it up.
Exactly. Run it down to the shot clock buzzer and then knock down a three. Anderson from Tacoma, Washington, actually played high school basketball at Garfield, which has had tremendous success over the years. He used to be coached by Ed Haskins. Now former NBA star Brandon Roy is in charge at Garfield.
Miller lost his balance, and that allows Joyce an easy layup. And he lost his balance because it looked like he may have turned an ankle. But he's back up on his feet and on his way to the huddle. Utah State's rolling. Utah State, impressive on the road. First of a 2-game series against Air Force, and in command here, 70-38 right now. Craig Smith, who had COVID, was down and out, did not coach in the BYU game. They lost that game by just 3 to BYU. Like many programs, they've had to stop and start and stop and start. And here they are with a chance to go 3-0 to start the Mountain West Conference. You can see both teams have had a couple of games postponed. Sean Bairstow off the bench. Utah State showing depth. Stephen Ashworth has played some nice minutes. This is Ashworth, the freshman out of Alpine, Utah. We got Trevin Dorius in the game as well. Anderson launches, missed on a 3. And the rebound to Abe Kinraid of Air Force.
I like the way, though, that Utah State continues to attack the zone. Not only get the ball to the high post, the soft spot, but then dribble penetrations and pick and rolls as well. A nice mixture of those 3.
Chris Joyce really hasn't been as involved as he's been in the start of this season for Air Force. He was averaging almost 15 points a game coming in. He's had games of 23, 23, and 18.
And I know we've talked a lot, sorry Rich, we've talked a lot about the turnover issues in the glass for Air Force, but their top 2 leading scorers, Joyce and Walker, have really struggled today. And you got to credit the defense of Utah State for that. And then Ashworth, the freshman, stepping up and knocking down another 3 in the corner.
This is a really good sign for Utah State when you're getting the minutes like you're getting from Bairstow and Ashworth and Anderson off the bench. Air Force answers with a 3. Keita is out. Bairstow can slash. He won the slam dunk contest his freshman year. You know, the preseason opening practice slam dunk and 3-point shooting. Bairstow trailing on defense. And that's going to be a walk and a turnover.
Now is 20 turnovers for Air Force. That's quite the discrepancy. Utah State has done a nice job of taking care of it, getting opportunistic setups for Keita on the interior, and then being really patient to get Miller and other guys open on the 3-point line.
Anderson misses on the 3. Well, it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, I think people, when they heard that Joe Scott was coming back, they thought about that last year in a Mountain West championship and taking down. I mean, remember in the Mountain West at that time, Utah was good. Rick Majerus was there. You had BYU in the league. San Diego State had Steve Fisher, obviously. They were really good. And Joe Scott was able to climb from the absolute basement to a championship in 4 years. It's gonna take time.
It is going to take time.
Go ahead, Danny.
It is going to take time. And with the Princeton offense, and some of the new wrinkles that Joe Scott has added and wants to add with this team, it's not an offense that you can pick up and have all 5 guys be great at it in a week or even a month. It takes chemistry, it takes timing, it takes a lot of patience to get to know the different wrinkles and the reads and the spacing that makes that offense so difficult to guard. And quite frankly, it's only a matter of time. He's got to get the right players in that understand and fit his system very well. But he's done it before, and he'll do it again.
Well, he set the groundwork, because after he left, Chris Mooney had a great year, and then Jeff Bezdelik came in, and in his 3 years, he also got to the NCAAs. That's Sidney Johnson, one of his assistants We'll talk more about Air Force and Joe Scott's plans to revive this program. They're down big to Utah State. (75-41), Utah State impressive here on the road. First of a two-game series against Air Force. Dan, you and I were talking about Joe Scott and coming back, trying to revive and rebuild what he had. You know, one of the things he was able to do when he started climbing at Air Force was the type of athletes that he was able to get here really fit his system. Guys like Nick Welch, you know, a 6'7" guy who could play inside and shoot outside. Antoine Hood. He had glue guys like A.J. Cool and Jacob Birchie. And it's so important to have that 6'7", 6'8" guy who can shoot the three in this system.
Without a doubt. You want size that has the versatility to play inside out, shoot it from the perimeter, but then put the ball on the deck into dribble handoff type situations and make reads when players come into split actions. You got to be able to make the play.
Kinraid, an open three. And the three-point shot's so important in this Princeton offense, isn't it?
A lot of times, if you can set it up with the ability to shoot the three, teams are going to start fighting through screens. So now you have the ability to keep the defense on their toes. And they guess wrong, you make the correct read. Maybe it's a back cut, maybe it's a curl cut.
Air Force right now 5 of 15 from beyond the arc. It's going to be a headache to play Air Force, but it may take a year or two before Joe Scott gets it really rolling and headed back where he had it. And we saw Sidney Johnson, his assistant, you know, his right-hand man when he started the climb was Chris Mooney, who after taking over here for a year went on to Richmond, and he's had just a wonderful career as the head coach at Richmond. And that's why Sidney Johnson is here by his side. Johnson, who also played and coached at Princeton and at Fairfield, is his #1 assistant. Dominant is Utah State on the glass. On the stat sheet, just 5 turnovers to 21 for Air Force.
And the turnovers for Air Force have been turnovers that have led to opportunities in transition a lot of times for Utah State. That turnover that Utah State has, it's a dead ball turnover, so Air Force really doesn't create any advantage.
Shot clock is down. Got to get it off. Kinraid does. And clanks a 3. A lot of bench time right now for Utah State. And this is valuable time for these guys with the canceled games. You're not
only canceled games, but the pauses that many programs have due to COVID, and Utah State has had one. You're missing practice time, and you're missing, you know, time to learn the system as a young player. You're missing out on time to work on your spacing and your overall understanding of the philosophy that needs to be done. It's difficult right now.
That's a really nice step through by Bairstow. And Utah State stretches the lead. How much, and look, people talk about Princeton offense, this and that. There are so many teams that have Princeton principles, not just in college basketball over the last 20 years, but in the NBA. I would expect in your NBA tour, you ran into a lot of it, or maybe ran a lot of it.
I actually had my best NBA season in the Princeton offense, playing for the New Orleans Hornets as Akaya hits the nice little jump hook in the lane. But our coach was Byron Scott, who learned the Princeton offense from Pete Carrill, the godfather of that offense, when they were both assistant coaches in Sacramento. And it was good for me because I could read screens, I could react, it could manipulate the defense to open up something new for me that I wanted to see. It's an offense that's really predicated on understanding of timing, spacing, and reading of the defense.
And those are the same principles that Joe Scott said. Look, it's a lot of it. Basketball has evolved. The game changes, and you have to change with it. But a lot of those principles still hold today. Today, though, it's been all Utah State from the jump. Brock Miller was terrific. Neemias Queta and Justin Bean dominated the offensive glass. And this game has not been in doubt for a long time. Walker posting up, backs in, kick out, and another missed three. And Joe Scott, you know, in talking about the schedule, speaking of the NBA, Dan, said it's a lot like the NBA. If you play a team twice within a week or twice back-to-back, you have to make adjustments on the fly. And that's what coaches across the Mountain West are going to have to do, because off day tomorrow, Utah State and Air Force then play again.
Yeah, you're exactly right in the fact that, you know, it is like an NBA type scenario, especially if you're thinking playoffs in the NBA. It's the little adjustments maybe, or the little matchups that will be fascinating to watch which coaches are better than others at it. If you look at Air Force today, you want to give Utah State a lot of credit, you should, but Air Force really has hurt themselves by the amount of turnovers that they had in their inability to keep the larger Aggies off the offensive glass.
Ashworth with a driving layup. He's been impressive. He's got 10 points in 17 minutes. It's a guy that was on an LDS mission for 2 years, is back. People may have forgotten about him. He's one of the top players, if not the top player, as a high schooler in the state of Utah. This is Ashworth in transition, Bairstow underneath. And they are young, but these guys off the bench are really good.
Giving them a different dynamic. But you create offense through your defense. Ashworth, the steal, pushing up the floor. Bairstow, the athletic finish.
College basketball on CBS Sports Network is sponsored by Advil. Pain says you can't. Advil says you can. By Rogue. Don't weaken. And by McDonald's.
Yes, this is where it all started for Pop. He was the captain for Bob Spear. A lot of great history with Air Force basketball. Hank Egan, a terrific coach, also had a nice run there. Dean Smith was an assistant for 4 years, way back when. And probably their best years ever were under the man in the middle there, Joe Scott, who absolutely breathed fire into the program, got them to the NCAA tournament, and when he left the cupboard full of terrific athletes and players. And the next two coaches, Chris Mooney, Jeff Bedzelic, continued that run. But it's been a long dry spell for the Falcons. They have not had a winning season since that last year by Bedzelic back in 2007, a winning season in conference. And here, Utah State in the Mountain West on top 81-44. Mason Taylor into the ball game for Air Force. Falcons don't play a lot of guys right now, and they miss another three.
One of the things you've got to be excited about if you're an Air Force fan is they've got Joe Scott, who knows the recipe for success of players to recruit to fit into not only his style of play, but also the structure and the demands that it takes to be a student athlete at Air Force. You get a packet of game notes of stats and stories, and you look at the daily regiment that these student athletes have to go through. It's pretty darn impressive. Wake up at 6:15 and your day is full all the way until 10:30 at night. You've got to have a very special student athlete that wants to not only come here but have success, and Joe Scott will find those kids.
something he said that worked the first time through, in that there are a lot of differences between the Air Force Academy and all the other Division I college basketball programs. But he said we have to use what we have at the Air Force Academy to our advantage, and not to our, make sure it's not to our disadvantage. And this is a, look, they're going to have a lot of learning moments. This certainly is one of those. Taking their lumps from the two-time defending champs of the Mountain West, Utah State. And I know it pains San Diego State fans to hear that, because Utah State and Craig Smith have captured those championships both times in the Mountain West Championship game in the Mountain West Tournament in Las Vegas, including last year, that great nail biter. You were there courtside, Dan, to see Sam Merrill with that dagger shot at the end to win it by 3.
That was one of the best college games that I was at last year. It ended up being the last one of the year that I was at covering. I called the game for Westwood One Radio, but you and I did the quarters and the semis for CBS Sports Network. And that Utah State team, there was just something special about the way they were playing at the end of the year. And I don't want to take any credit away from San Diego State, because they had a good year, but it's not so much in the title game that San Diego State lost it. It's that Sam Merrill won that game for Utah State.
Well, Utah State going deep on their bench. Zahar Vedishev misses a 3, and Ashworth runs down a rebound and a rebounding foul. And remember, Neemias Keita was not 100% last year. You mentioned it. He played in just 20 games last year. That broken kneecap that he had the following, or the previous summer, and even in the Florida game he was injured. They would go on to beat Florida in Florida. I mean, just think what they would have been like last year if Keita had been 100% like he was his freshman year, or even what we've seen just today.
Yeah, he's been a difference maker tonight. He is great hands, so in pick and roll situations he can catch and finish in transition. Defensively, we've talked about it throughout the broadcast, he's such a rim protector, and that's a luxury at the college level.
81-46 rematch in 2 days between Utah State and Air Force. And I think you're right. I think the first thing at the top of the list is turnovers and figuring out offensive rebounding and trying to limit that, because Utah State has 15 offensive rebounds to go with 15 defensive rebounds. I mean, it's not often, Dan Dickow, that you shoot 50%, which Air Force has done, and trail by 35 points, which they do.
Well, the turnover factor that we've mentioned on multiple occasions, you do that, you're giving more bullets to the opponent, and that's hard to overcome, especially when that team shoots it as well as Utah State has done it tonight.
Joseph Octave in the ball game for Air Force. He misses a 3. This is Sean Bairstow. Zahar Vedishev spinning into traffic. And he walked. And you got a couple of games in the Mountain West tonight as well. Nevada and New Mexico in Lubbock. Boise State and San Jose State in Phoenix. As we told you, 2 Mountain West games on the CBS Sports family of networks. On Saturday, Colorado State, who's off to a great start, at San Diego State on CBS on Saturday. And then Nevada and New Mexico late night on CBS Sports Network. But I'll tell you what, even though Sam Merrill and Abel Porter and Diogo Brito are no longer playing at Utah State. Just watching what we've seen today, Dan, this is a NCAA caliber team potentially for Utah State.
I would agree. Craig Smith is a tremendous coach. He's got a nice blend of experienced players that are well kind of skilled in what Craig Smith wants in Keita as well as Bean, and he's got a nice mix of young players, Worcester, Ashworth at the guard positions. Then you add a transfer from Virginia and Marco Anthony, who can really score the ball in different ways than Brock Miller from the three-point line. You've got a versatile mix, and I think they are going to surprise a lot of people that thought when Sam Merrill was gone they were going to take a dive.
Yeah, Brock Miller is playing at a really high level right now, and that's great to see. Of course, the other part of this schedule is it's going to be tough sometimes for a team like Utah State or Boise State or San Diego State, the upper level teams, to have to beat an opponent twice in a 3-day period, especially if you're on the road, even though there's no crowd on the road. And the final seconds melt off on an impressive Mountain West win. Utah State has raced to a 3-0 start in the Mountain West. And Air Force is going to have to regroup, make some adjustments tomorrow, and get back after Utah State in 2 days. It is a final from Colorado Springs, 83-48. Of course, in COVID times, there's no way to, the handshakes after the game. It's just a wave and a wink and a nod. And Air Force, as is tradition at any athletic event, always stands for the alma mater. And in the Mountain West, as is tradition, the opponent of Air Force also stands as well. Well, this was a balanced and impressive performance by Craig Smith's Utah State Aggies. 5 in double figures. We'll put a wrap on it when we return to the Air Force Academy.